Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming up on such a rainy day to beautiful Maleny and Yinabara country, just south of Baroon, the sacred country of Baroon for all Bunya, and for Yinabara and Kabi people and visiting people throughout, Waka Waka people, got Bunjalung people, got people from throughout this country here today, and all of us, including myself very much in this, I can only speak for me, Europeans, who are here today to try and do the right thing by country and by our Bunyas. I think we often forget, and I think it's only just occurred to us to discuss this point, is myself and Karen, at the beginning of these things, that we forget to, we're so busy doing it, we don't often get a little bit of background. I try and do it. Karen often forgets it. She never introduces herself. But that's Karen. If she wants to introduce herself later, I'll do that. But I'm Spencer Shaw. I was born in a little place called Rochdale in the foothills of the Pennines, near the River Roach, up in the far north of England, just out of Manchester, which is... I've always in the past, I've always felt disconnected and very unhappy that my parents took me from the country, and I would have moved back there when I turned 20, but for the fact of meeting this beautiful lady. I was just about to move back and we bumped into each other, and as they say, the rest is history. But I do get there a little bit more often. Our son has moved to Sweden, and we were there in November last year, and I did something I thought I'd never do, and that's go to England for the weekend. Three nights, 7 hours door to door. It's like going from Brisbane to Sydney, really. But and I feel a really deep connection to my country more than ever now. I go and visit it, and an understanding of a sick country and what I thought was beautiful as a kid. I realised it's a sick country, and I have really good talks with archaeologist mates who know far more about this than me, about how we've sort of mucked that up a long while ago, and we're living with it, and what we think is normal isn't really normal, and that's what we've got to, one of the things that we're trying to address in discussions like this. We're on this slow rate of attrition ecologically that we consider to be normal, and we don't even see it. This is going to stop me now. Could be hours. I've got half an hour. I've got to see the clock. If anybody else that is speaking, just remember there's a clock at the back there. I'm only just starting, so we're running really well. But, if we just look at the horrific story, the Bunya, we're talking about the Bunya at the moment, but we're talking about things like, I was fortunate enough to meet Ken in his workplace, down at the Ecological Science Precinct, and talking about his work back in the 60s and showing me emus, photos of emus at Kalula. So that's gone. We've got gastric breeding frogs, disappeared when we just sort of came up here and started, and cascade tree frogs, gone. All these little bits just dropping out of the landscape, and our lifespan is so short. We don't see, and we're actually seeing all these things in a lifespan. So many things disappearing. Are we going to see the Bunya disappear? I'm going to be hopeful and say I don't think we're going to see the Bunya disappear, but we're living with this attrition, with this dropping away, with this nature just slowly becoming smaller around us, with this country becoming sicker around us, and that's a big part of what we're talking about is bringing back a respect for that and putting that front and centre. What's good for country comes first. That we need to respect that and bring that back. So that's probably led straight into my acknowledgement of country in a rather tangenty way. These axe grinding grooves have always been there. The people who put them there know that they're there. They're still there. And we're just reconnecting with this lost history through the landscape. These were just some of our crew found them just quite recently. No, that's an older one. That's another one. There's so many of these sites around Baroon that's not funny, and the creeks here. This is just everywhere through country. This is these sites. This is probably not an axe grinding site. This is probably a food preparation site. So this is probably Bunya and Maybar black bean preparation. So prior to colonial settlement, Yinabara and Kabi people, like all Indigenous people here and throughout the world, lived with and within this country. It provided all their sustenance, both physically, socially, and spiritually. This country was not wilderness. That's a statement we often hear is like, oh, we're going in. Humans are just anti-nature and all that sort of stuff. And humans have lived just about everywhere on the planet apart from Antarctica. And we have lived in balance with nature eventually all throughout the planet. This country has been shaped by and in turn shaped traditional custodians over deep ecological time. The colonial settlement period, which continues today, has caused massive damage and disruption to country, to native ecosystems. Traditional custodians have always and will always lead the way in healing country. And if we could just all acknowledge that, that'd be great, thank you. And the next slide. So what I wanted to talk about today, I'm trying to keep myself in a small, another little tangent I just remember from yesterday. I was fortunate to hang out in a little meeting with Mita, who's going to be speaking later today. And I love so many aspects of Māori culture. And this another one I got introduced yesterday was second speaker. I just love that, because you're always going to forget something when you're up there talking. And Mita had his second speaker, Tanya, to be, and then there could be a third speaker and a fourth speaker. And then it just blows your mind, that concept, because it's like, it's not just about this person here at the front who's doing all the talking. It's about all of us in a group adding to that conversation. And making sure that everything's covered by the end of the day, making sure that all our voices are heard. Not that we're going to give you all the mic for 5 minutes today. Sorry about that, but practicalities. So what I want to come back to with our project, Beyond Bunya Dieback. So if anybody, and there are quite a few new faces here today, we've called it Beyond Bunya Dieback because that's very much what we're looking on. We don't want to focus on the dieback itself. This was another lesson from our Māori whenua is don't focus on the disease, don't focus on the problem, focus on the overall health of country. And so we want to look beyond Bunya Dieback. That's just a simple play with words for now, and who knows where it will go. But yeah, so she's moved me along already. So we've done recording. So at the moment it's pretty basic recording. So you've got to forget this is a Ma and Pa kettle operation. And she's Ma kettle, I'm Pa teapot, something like that. That we're just doing this while we're trying to make a living and with our families and all that sort of stuff as well. So we've got our business, but we're doing this and towards the end I'll give you an update of where we're going next with all of this. So we're still doing our recordings, and so that unfortunately is a reflection of where Bunya Dieback sites. Not each one of those yellow dots isn't a bunya tree, that's a cluster. It could be an individual, it could be 20, 30 trees. So it's a site. So that's Bunya Dieback site, recorded throughout the Blackall Range. The big cluster in the top there is Witta. The unfortunate thing about that is that Witta would have been the bunya country on top of the range, as opposed to somewhere like Cairncross, which has never really had bunya in that particular patch. When we switch up to the Witta, you switch to a black soil, and there's potentially a bit change, and it gets a little bit drier out there, and we'd have bunya on the top. There's heaps, like in some of these forest areas that are still left around, particularly that big one up in the north, in the north-west, so the top left-hand corner. That's walleye, and the gully in the top is some of the biggest bunyas I've ever seen in the world, which is our tiny little bit of the world. It just sounds more emphatic when I say the world. But there's trees in there that are huge. I've went down there with BJ a few years ago and sat on this cliff, and we were looking down at these trees, and these massive trees that were maybe a kilometre or two away, but you could still see them. And then all of a sudden we saw one tree that emerged above them all. And we're estimating that one's 60, 70 plus metres, and we're going to get a drone down there one of these days. But by far, some of the biggest bunyas I've seen are in that. And then tucked up into Mapleton Forest in the gullies up there as well. So not too many down this end, but big clusters up the northern end. That's mainly to do with where bunyas are more dominant, not to do with where there's more disease or anything like that. I'd say that's just to do where the bunyas are present in the landscape and other factors that are combined with that. So there'll be new sites on there that I won't have picked up yet, but that's a good... There are sites north and south, but it was blowing it out into a slide that wasn't really going to work visually then. So next one, please. We did a pilot sample collection last year. Again, Ma and Pa Kettle. It's like, how are we going to do this stuff? We've been plugging away at it for years. We need to get some results, and so we just thought, we'll go and do some recordings, go and get some samples ourselves. So in conjunction with Lake Baroon, we accessed one of the sites that they work on for SEQ water, and they had a big patch of dieback there, and so we collected soil samples from around one particularly big cluster and a few other patches of bunya that were, and this is proper bunya country too, but regenerating. It's been cleared, it's been a farm, run in a traditionally farmy kind of way, we got 4 samples from that site, and that was in October last year. That was with myself and the Uniborough Rangers. Next slide. There's just a few photos of what the site looks like closer down. So there's some leaf disease happening there as well. This is how quick the trunks break down when they're falling down. This probably was about 5 or 6 year old site or something like that. I think it is something, maybe, yeah. But the trees decay very quickly, being a conifer. Once the Phytophthora has done its work and the dieback's occurred, and then the fungi get in there and just decompose. And next one. So there's the far left, that's the soil sampling. Spotlessly clean shovels, little trowels, going in Ziploc bags, ideally getting a little bit of root material, or definitely getting a bit of root material, and we're about 500 grams that we were collecting on that day. There's the bag ready to go in the post. Bunya block dieback 0.1, recorded by me. 1 tree recently dead, 13th, fifth. And there's a sample of that leaf. And then next slide, that was the results that came back. So nothing conclusive yet. So Jeff, or if Jeff might know or could talk more to this at some point if anybody wants to know more about it. And Ken will cover a lot of stuff about this. There's so many experts here today. I don't want to cover too much, but the interesting thing for me with this is that what was present in there isn't currently seen as a cause of dieback for bunya, but that testing has to be done to be conclusively seen as a cause of death for bunya. So they could just be Phytophthora that are randomly present through the landscape, because we've introduced a lot of things. So that could be any of those Phytophthora calmani, the cryptogaea, and then we've got these hybrid ones, and a whole heap of other different bits and pieces, that funny leaf things, the Pestalotiopsis. I thought I was going to be able to do that. That's why I started, and then I couldn't, so I'm just embarrassed now. But but known foliage stress pathogen of pine. So yeah, there's a whole heap of things going on, and that's what this wasn't an intact forest. Again, that's the crucial thing I'd like you to remember in our work. Most of what we're seeing is in paddock trees and disturbed sites that have got lots of other things going on around them besides the Phytophthora, even though there's a range of Phytoptheras there. So it didn't appear, this is the problem. After 5 years, 6 years of doing this, it's like, do I know any answers? No. And the guys who are studying it must be, it must be even trickier still. I think I'm coming to a holistic view of it, that it's to do with overall soil health and overall ecosystem health. But there's so many things that we've chucked in there, it's hard to look at them in, we do look at them in isolation, but it's hard to look at them in the ecosystem and the impacts that they have. And the next slide, please. So what do you do when you go to Sweden to meet your new grandson, and you've been there for about 5 days, and where are they? The grandson's beautiful and everything like that. It's good catching up with your family. You think, go on Google, dieback, Sweden, and all of a sudden you've got contacts with dieback happening in Sweden, and you're teeing up meetings over there to go and catch up with people in Sweden. And Angus came with us, and we checked out this fantastic forestry nursery, which was an interesting story in itself, because Matthew has been working in this place for a few years. He said he's mainly the data man of monitoring all this sort of stuff, but they've got this, if anybody wants to look it up, it's quite interesting if you want to take a photo of that website or remember that, or just remember Ash Dieback, Sweden, so Ash Dieback, Sweden, and they get a dieback that's blowing around, a fungus that's blowing around in the killing off the tops of the trees, and they're just progressively dying. It kills the tips. But what they can do is that they've got if anybody's ever worked with Himalayan ash as a weed around here, you know that they just reproduce massively by seed and they just end up everywhere. But then they've got even if they had like 5% of the population that's resistant, because each of those 5%, those trees that are in that 5% produce tens of thousands of seeds a year, they can potentially do a big bounce back quite quickly with assistance, because it could get wiped out in an area. And this is horrendous because it is a very important tree ecologically, but they do have the possibility of selecting these resistant trees and getting them back in the landscape again. And that's what all those sticks are. Because, you know, as you can see by the jumpers and the safety jacket, it's very cold there. And this is obviously the deciduous time of year. And look at the size of the glass house. Isn't that a fantastic? I'd love to have a glass house that big. That's just so cool. But so we met with these guys, and I guess the story is there that dieback is global. You know, these issues that we're facing. Even though I mentioned before that we've done a pretty good job of mucking up big parts of, the people who come from Europe have done a pretty good job of mucking up the big parts of Europe before they decided to move everywhere else on the planet. It's still happening there as well. There's a lot more stuff happening. Due to climate change, they've got an oak dieback, which is one of their very significant broadleaf trees. Because they're putting it down to climate change, they're getting a lot wetter weather that's staying wetter in the wetter soils, and they're having the whole microbiome in the soil is shifting, and these trees become more vulnerable to dieback then. So the thing that we call dieback is often associated with a pathogen, so let's say Phytophthora, but it's also these other factors that need to be taken into consideration as well that are causing the actual dieback itself. It's not just the Phytophthora, it's the climate change, it's warmer, it's the wetter soils, all those sort of things in that particular situation, and that's what's happening for us as well. So that was a little catch-up in Sweden. And then we went to the Ecological Sciences Precinct to meet Ken. And I'm not going to talk too much to Ken because he's here to talk about himself today. But I mean, what an honour to meet Ken and these guys and all the work that's been done. And as Ken's got 60 plus years of work in this field, which is just absolutely phenomenal when it comes to ecological sciences, I think. But an amazing, quite an interesting facility to go and check out down there if you ever get the chance. And thank you. We actually got to see the Phytophthora swimming around. I'm sure Ken might discuss that with you. What else have we done this year with our Bunya project? Obviously, this was the mast year. Has anybody not had seen a Bunya seed this year or cone this year? They're just everywhere. This tree here is on the right is a double trunk tree. On our property that was in a paddock that we're revegetated around now. It was in a paddock. It's about, what have been there, let's say 30 years old. It had 90 cones on it. That's about 20 on that bucket there. An absolutely phenomenal amount, and that's representative. They were quite small cones. They were about 3.3 kilos each cone. But I've seen and heard of cones of up to say 12 kilos, so 4 times that size, up to 4 times that size. And they were just, it's been a fantastic year to celebrate the bounty of the Bunya. We've eaten Bunya in just about every way you can eat it. And we've put down 5,000, as we'll come to in the next slide, 5,000 seedlings. But absolutely phenomenal crop. The scary thing about this, as Ken, there's a bit of information given to us by Ken, is that potentially when plants are doing these big fruiting periods, they could also be making themselves more vulnerable in the root systems, and there's not much energy going down to protect the roots. So what we're going to have to watch is probably not much over the next few months while it stays consistently wet, but I've often seen this up here in winter now. So as soon as it starts to dry out in, say, July, August, that's when we'll start seeing dieback again. So the roots are being damaged at the moment, or have been damaged, but they still get able to get the water up into them. And then all of a sudden, when it starts to dry out, we'll see this. What's that term again? Hydraulic failure. So that's when they just can't pull the water up anymore. And the next slide is, please. So when we've plenty of bunya out around country, and I'm sure lots of people have. That's me and Bruce from Murray Tucker's here somewhere. Hey, Bruce. They were off their way to Bribie and to Harvey Bay. They've been to Minjerribut. I've even been posting them to Tassie. So our bunyas have got around this year. And that's a really important thing, is to get the bunya shared on country, particularly to traditional custodians. It's the thing that's often forgotten. The one thing I did see in social media, many traditional custodians in more of an urban environment were finding it, even though there were so many bunyas around, were finding it hard to get it because people have seen a buck in it, and they're also, the amount of bunyas I've seen on the side of the road for $5-10 or and people are just going out there and grabbing them and selling them, and in some places that's reduced availability. So something we've really got to watch for is making sure that bunya is available for traditional cultural purposes. And the next one. So in the past, well, many years ago, I never noticed this, but for the last 5 years, I'll tell you, it's either rats or my namesake, the brush turkey, that gets in and gets your bunyas. And they either get them when you put the seed down, and we used to put those pots, the 300mm pots on the back there, we used to put individual sheets of mesh over them. And then when we potted them up, the rats would either pull them out, or the brush turkeys would pull them out of the tubes. At up to maybe 6 months after they'd been potted up, they could get raided. And we'd lose anything up to 20%, probably even more than that, up to 50% at times of the seedlings that we potted up. And so it took me forever, but I got an aviary from Bunnings that we call Fort Knox. And geez, it's a game changer. So we've got this mesh house in there that lots and lots of different seeds are going in there. We've seen a big transition on our block as it's progressed from being an old cattle paddock to native bushland, from exotic rats to native rats and melomys and all that sort of stuff. But they still eat the seed, I still got to protect them. And the brush turkey is one of the worst because he can just jump over she can just jump over the fence. And they do all sorts of interesting little bits of sporadic damage around the place. But we learn to live with it, and we build things like this instead. So we've got over, I think there's about 5,500, 6,000 seed put down. I'm aiming for about 5,000 seedlings out of that I want to get up this year. So, and the next one. So a busy year of publications. We've been in Land for Wildlife. We got a feature piece in Esther Beaton's big article in the Australian Geographic. We got a piece in the Australian Association of Bush Regenerators, and there was a paper written Beyond Bunya Dieback, a composite article. You can read the rest of that. That's a really interesting article with a range of authors. Yeah, Robin Fox, the lead author in that, somewhere here as well. Thank you, Robin. And just about all the authors are here. Yeah. So that's an interesting paper to read through, and we're building up a background that we can take to a range of people or organisations on this, on the importance of the subjects that we're dealing with. This is so good. I was so worried I'd done nothing in the last year, and now I'm getting to this point. I'm thinking, we have actually done a few bits and pieces this year. And the next one. Presentations, symposium last year, just over 100 people this year. We were booked for 140 this year, so it's a growing interest. We've been in a range of webinars and presentations through the year. Karen jumped in on the dieback, the DIG group conference in Western Australia, and just a few weeks ago I did because of all the bunya, there was a bit of interest in the wider media, and did a chat on Talkback Radio for ABC Queensland. So the coming year, I don't know whether you want to jump in on any of this, Karen. What we're in the process of establishing at the moment is a not-for-profit to look at a lot of this sort of work, and we were hoping to have this set up for today, but there's a few things hit us in the last few months.
I worked there is a sign-on sheet at the back. So if you're interested in finding more information about this incorporated association, which will be membership based, leave your details there and we'll be in touch. So we're in the process. It's been applied for. We just have to wait for all the paperwork to come back for it to be official.
So the name is Bunya Network. So traditionally it would have been Bonyi, but this was a clever play on words from Arnie Z of putting the Yinabara and Kabi word at the front and the English translation second. So we acknowledge that. And so it's the colonials and the traditional owners both represented in the protection of Bunya and a network. We were getting into all sorts of tangents like mycelium, and all that sort of stuff. But so that's our network that's on its way. And with that vehicle, we'll be looking at achieving, because at the moment we fund this ourselves, and you good people here today have paid to come. That's about our main fundraiser for the year. With this, we're looking at, Karen's been having really interesting meetings with people who've set up like the Threatened Species Network and all sorts of stuff like that. So something that's going to address these pathogen diseases and bicultural, let's call it bicultural threats throughout the landscape, throughout the country. We are going to develop I'm doing this, so when I come and see you next year, I'll review this and I say, we've done this now, so we make sure so we'll have our landholder management recommendations. So that's just for all the people with their backyards. We're going to play a little bit of a game later. What might come out of that, I'll leave that till later, and get something solid happening with the Dieback site mapping. But obviously we need funding for that, because at the moment we're just running it off Google Earth and iNaturalist and looking for different platforms to host that sort of stuff on. And obviously we're going to grow a lot more Bunya. We're going to be looking at Bunya health in general, but with the pictures, it's happening slowly, but there's so much more of it coming together, and growing our Bunya connections, which is the ecological connections, but also the connections with people through country as well. So that's the flyer that Karen's put together. You can have a look at that. That's available on the Forest Heart website. And the next one. Okay. Are we taking the piss here? This is a bit of a tangent, and with all respect given, this is about what you can do with your paper afterwards. We want some ideas back on Bunya, but I come up with the crazy ideas, and Karen makes it reality. So one of the things, Arnie Zetha did a talk on SBS Insight a few years ago about people climbing the mountains, and unfortunately there isn't much in the wider population and much respect for the cultural reasons that we shouldn't be going up the mountain, which I'm hoping many of us would agree with. But there can be some sway on the environmental arguments, and so I was trying to think of all the different threats that are happening environmentally on the mountains, and I'm doing so good for time. You've got to give me. Am I going to get a gold star afterwards? Yeah. One of the things that happens is with what people take up with them. So they're taking up, when you walk up the mountain, the Glasshouse Mountains, your physical impact, you're walking up whether it's wet or it's dry, particularly those wet weather spells are going to be quite hard. You've got weed seeds on your feet, you've got pathogens on your feet, or on your pants or wherever they might be. There's a whole heap of stuff you're walking up there, and then we're only human. You get to the top, it's been a hard walk. You might have sweated out a heap, but there might be some concentrated urea left inside you. And people are having a leak up there. And I sort of thought about it at the time, we need more research on this, but I thought that's got to be having an impact as well, because we're getting some, pure nitrogen certainly has been shown to have some impact on increasing Phytophthora populations. And so it's just all, are we taking the piss? Or are we actually going to do this? I think a mate said the other day, we need to get this on the mainstream media because it could have legs. But we're just trying to get a little bit of humour out there to the majority of the population who are just going to say, nah, mate, nah. With something like this to get it into their heads that, maybe change the way people think about things. I know nobody's going to go up there and piss in a bottle and bring it back down with them. Would I? I don't know. I'm not going to go and climb the mountain for starters. But we do need to have these discussions, and if we can have it with a little bit of humour, maybe we can actually cut through a little bit here and there. We're not going to stop everybody, but if we get people thinking about it, maybe we're going to get somewhere with it. So maybe there might be the odd little sticker pops up on signs down at national parks. I'll give you a warning now, guys. But take the piss for country, and it is. If you can read that, I don't know whether you can read that. If you choose to climb or walk in sensitive areas, bring a small reusable bottle, take your piss with you, and leave country as you found it. It's respectful, it's practical, it works. So take the piss, we act, a big ecological impact. This campaign uses humour to encourage respectful behaviour, change, and does not endorse the climbing of culturally significant sites. So that's... If you've guessed it, we probably do have some pretty strange sense of humour at times. What's that? What about number twos? Well, somebody else I was talking to was some sort of backpack. I mean, we do it with doggy packs. So it's just the conversation, isn't it? So we all laugh at this sort of stuff, but maybe it cuts through. So are we taking the piss, or is it serious? I don't know. I think this has got some legs in some ways. Everybody else mentioned it too. And we want a similar campaign about Bunya. So if anybody's got any ideas, the obvious ones are nuts and things like that, to chuck them in there. But look after your nuts. But yeah, that's already been used by the macadamia group. But so if we can... I was woken everybody up. You're all getting a bit sleepy before that, but everybody's giggling again now, so that's really good. Hey? Nurture your nuts? Yeah. So... Yeah. So, maybe you'll see this around more. So what does everybody think about that? Is that too offensive? Is that too far? Or is it a little bit... I mean, the Northern Territory got away with their advertising campaign, Surely. Yeah. Okay. And surely that was too far. But yeah, I think this one cuts a nice line. Hey? Don't be a tosser. Yep. Yeah. Take the piss. So I don't think people are going to do that, but maybe they'll think about where they, or do I really need to go for a leak before I go up there? Maybe, do I even need to go up there? Well, I don't know, maybe it'll start that discussion.
Kate needs to dance to a ringtone.
Kate needs to... Okay. All right, so quickly, so that's us. That's our nursery. A little bit on brush turkey again, just to remind you who we are, because we usually forget to plug that bit. And is that the last one? So thank you very much for your time, guys. And get ready for... We got Ken on next. Thank you.